Well, it's 2:31. I'll call the Finance and Personnel Committee to order. Present are Finance Director Brian Crum, Deputy Finance Director Amber Cutlip, Fourth Ward Council Member Nathan Martin, Projects Coordinator Joe Geis, and myself, Garland Gates. We're going to deviate from our norm, and because we want to spend a great deal of time today talking about the American Rescue Plan. Brian, you had sent out an email or had forwarded an email from the state auditor with the directive, or excuse me, bulletin 2021-004, 9 pages worth. I printed that out and took my highlighter to it. So that's where we want to start today, is looking at that guidance from the state auditor. What that it is, there's not. I know more than I knew before, but I don't know yet a lot. I don't know that anyone does. So.
By the way, does anybody need me to email them another copy of that? Everybody got one? Take that as a yes. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Well, the essential things that I picked from that, and to let the rest of the committee members know that I worked with the finance director, and we have a resolution coming to Monday's council meeting. It will do 3 things if passed. Will establish what is called the Local Fiscal Recovery Fund, and that's a name given by the state auditor. So that's not, I have no authorship of that. The second part is to authorize the finance director to accept all funds received under the American Rescue Plan. And the third part is that the city affirms that that those monies will be expended only in the manner prescribed by and consistent with said act and any applicable guidelines. So that's the substantive part that I picked up from the 9 pages of the bulletin. The bulk of it has to do with things that the finance department will have to worry about. There's a lot of technical things in there, as opposed to policy things that the council would establish. So I've really said everything I can say about that right now. So Brian, I'm going to let you add anything to it that you've picked up.
Yeah, thank you. And first of all, thank you very much for going through and getting that resolution done before I could even ask you. That was quite helpful of you. You know, there's, in a lot of ways, it'll be similar to what we're doing with the CARES Act money. You know, whereas we have a separate fund. You know, they do suggest in here that council get involved as far as passing legislation, you know, explaining how the expenditures meet the legal requirements. And I think we did that with the CARES Act money as well. You know, with the bigger expenditures, especially, you know, the stuff for economic development, and council was involved in the decision to replace or refund some of the wages for the police and fire for their separate activities. And so we'll continue to do that. So that's, you know, that's one big thing. You know, as far as tracking funds, I think it's going to be a lot like what we've been doing with the other ones. Amber, you're fabulous, and she has kept track of every expenditure from the CARES Act money. You know, we have a separate file for them, and then I have been reporting to Ohio well, it was like the first month and then the first 2 months. Now it's every quarter what we're spending out of there. And I give them a somewhat detailed breakdown, not an invoice by invoice list, but you know, a general, okay, well, these were, you know, this was remote login related because we purchased new computers, that sort of thing. And so we've got those records as well as Ohio does, and they're reviewing them quarterly. And so that's when the auditor comes in they'll be looking at all of that stuff as well. I would imagine that these funds will be the same general procedure. I'm sure they'll refine it over the next few years as we do have more time with this. I would agree. Obviously, this is thankfully not something that we're going to have to rush like we did the last one. From what I understand, we'll probably get half of the money this summer, would be my guess, and then the rest next year, and have until the end of 2024 to spend it. So, this is definitely something that we don't have to go out and start writing checks in the first 3 days we have the funds. And I think that it would be good to get a lot of input from various aspects of not only the city but community as you guys are making your decisions on how to spend those things. And I do have various lists here which I can talk about of some suggestions that have occurred from the city so far. Lost my train of thought there. But one thing I did really note in here is that they say, which is something that Amber and I are going to have to really be careful with, is, and it scares me a little bit, is, they say, recall that these federal funds are one-time funds and that entities should not build these amounts into their projects or programs that require a long-term source of revenue. Which, obviously we're not going to go and increase human resources expenses. We're not going to hire 30 new people or something. But it is kind of tricky because, when we do appropriations, we include the leftover funds from the prior year plus what we expect in revenue. And so it'll look like we have a lot of money to work with, and we will, but we'll just have to make sure to use it for one-time purposes and not get into the habit of increasing our expenditures each year and whittling the funds down so that we have a problem once they're gone. What page was it? I guess really the second page of the document under State Fiscal Recovery Fund, it lists and of course that's the state one, but it's pretty much similar for all of the the local one, I guess, is the next page.
The broad definitions.
Yeah, the broad definition.
Yeah, that's on the middle, right smack in the middle of page 3.
Yeah. So we'll go that one. And the lost revenue, that was sort of this could work out really well. And I didn't get it done for today, and I will get it to you shortly. But I'm going to edit my Excel file from appropriations because it shows the 2019 and 20 revenue side by side. So I'm going to get rid of all the rows that we don't need. And we'll be able to look at just the income items and how they dropped in 2020 compared to 2019. They make it a little more complicated because it says limited revenue loss due to pandemic relative to the fiscal year prior to the emergency. Oh no, I'm sorry. That's in the state one. They had a slightly different wording, but anyway, so we will have to prove that it's related, it's COVID related. But I think that with our income tax collection, I think that is because obviously wages, there were some lost wages which lost revenue for us. That's going to play a big part. The other thing, the utility funds.
Yeah,
but
I was specifically thinking, because wasn't that mentioned, Nathan, in when we met, that water collections were down and therefore sewer collections would be down too. So, that may be an easier place to document, lost revenue in water and sewer.
Sewer especially.
Yeah, I would agree. And, and then, obviously council decided to give, was it a month or half a month free last May in electric. that probably would qualify as well. So we might be able to get that money back,
Yeah.
which Amber brought up. Well, we could use that to take down the smokestack at the power plant.
Yeah. But
for-
let me interrupt for just a second. And for the audio record, let me state that Jessica Gribben has joined us.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
But talking with Mr. Ensman, especially the sewer fund is in a tight spot. It's a short-term tight spot because of new customers that will be coming in later in the year, but they are in a tight spot. So this could really help them out in the short term, to bump up that fund until our revenues are a little more stable. The other thing I like about the lost revenue is it does free it up to use it however council so chooses. It takes away all of the restrictions. So I think that's a positive option. The negative economic impact of the pandemic is another in their broad definition. That's a tough one. I'm certainly looking for more guidance, and I'm sure I will. And I'm sure Jessica will as well, because that sounds like it's right up her alley. And especially as they do allow us to transfer those funds to private nonprofits or public benefit corporations. And I don't know, like under the next bullet point underneath the broad definition, it says local governments are allowed to transfer the funds to a private nonprofit organization, a public benefit corporation involved in transportation. So I'm assuming that's separate from a nonprofit organization, or a special purpose unit of the state or local government. So I think that, and it does say that they'll have to set up their own fund. I think based on the one presentation we've heard so far that they'll have to use it for the same purpose, which, if it's economic development, that's something, or lost revenues, like I was thinking with like the CIC, they lost a lot of revenues last year because of the Bicycle Days Festival not happening. And so I would imagine, just like us losing income tax and utilities, we could probably transfer funds to organizations like them or other ones to either make up for their lost revenues, or if they're doing some sort of economic recovery from the pandemic. That's going to be a tough definition. Jessica, do you have any? So you took your microphone.
Yeah, I was just going to say, on the chamber and economic development side, we recently put out a survey to our members and businesses, just trying to gauge, kind of where people are at. Obviously, we ran the grant program in 2020. It is possible that could be ramped back up if we feel there's a need. So if you hear input from businesses that are still struggling, certainly pass it along. I will say it is a vast amount of work. So we're really trying to make sure that the need exists in a way that we can, help. So we just put out the survey this week. We're kind of looking to see how that comes back and what we feel like the need is. And we have, obviously communities would have to ask us to be involved again if we did grant dollars again. So we are open to it, I guess, open to a conversation about it. So
Brian, I'm going to jump back up to that broad definition paragraph where it talks about the negative economic impact of the pandemic. I wonder if we couldn't use the information from the grants, Jessica, that were given out to businesses here within the city, and somehow use that as a calculation for what that negative economic impact truly is.
Yeah, I could look at the Shelby businesses and come up with some data points if that would be helpful.
Yeah, all this is you know, it's as clear as mud is the best metaphor that comes to mind.
It could or could not be hopeful. Yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
So true. In that paragraph, they talk about premium pay for essential workers, including an additional up to $13 per hour. We can look into that. I don't know if that's really going to come to play in our community a whole lot. I guess I don't even know if that's essential workers for the city or if that's just all. As defined by the local CEO for work. But I just from conversations with folks in businesses, I don't know if our essential workers have really suffered financially from it or necessarily been terribly overworked, but that is definitely not for me to say. That's me probably talking a little bit out of line. But so we'll look into that. I don't, off the top of my head, don't think that's going to play a big part in our funding, but
I would agree.
we'll find out. And then broad investments in water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. I know that Nathan has suggested that we put into broadband, and I'm open to any conversations. We definitely have to look at funding options for the rest of it, because I'm struggling to figure out, based on our study, the dollars and cents of it. But that is an option. Mr. Ensman mentioned, as far as like water and sewer infrastructure. And by the way, here's another big random aside. Another question at the last presentation was, it says water, sewer, or broadband, not and or. So they were waiting on clarification on whether you can do it in one infrastructure project or multiple. I can't imagine that they meant just one. Especially if you're tearing up an area for water lines that also have bad sewer lines, it wouldn't make sense to not fund them both. But that is a point of clarification needed. But like in particular, John mentioned the area around Veterans Park. The water lines are just too small. He said that it's they barely get enough pressure out of the hydrants out there.
Brian,
So
we actually don't get enough pressure supposedly out of the hydrants. He says actually they would have to hook them up down the street, so that's not good.
yeah, no kidding. So,
Joe, do you happen to know offhand what the size of those water lines are out there on West
They're-
Park Drive?
They're 4-inch.
Oh, holy cow.
So yeah, and the fire department knows not even to use those. They'll pull from Vernon Road and pull down in there. So that's just more time. We've talked before about the same area off Walnut. So
Well, it's better than the 2 inches that the 2-inch lines they had on Clark Avenue north of Whitney.
well, a 4-inch line installed, and when was that put in out there? The 20s? It's probably a 2-inch or less by now anyhow.
that's true. Oh dear. So, I'm sure that we have some infrastructure projects that we can make use of funds for. Just to put things out there, conversations I've had with various department heads. Chief Thompson said that if it falls into the definition, one of our backup ambulance is aging. So this could be an opportunity to upgrade the fleet a little more, and assuming we want to keep 2 ambulances, which an ambulance runs $250,000 to $275,000. Let's see, Chief Combs, he had mentioned he's got a few things in the, well, he has a laundry list of stuff in the jail that could help, with sanitization and he wants washers and dryers and the what is it, Vita Oxide sprayer and stuff to spray the cells down, stuff like that. He has a list of suggestions which could either go into this fund or maybe CARES Act monies, if we still have some. And I think his list came out to be about $30,000.
What's the deadline for the CARES Act?
The end of this year,
Okay,
12/31/21. So, and we've got about 20,000 unencumbered still, I believe. And that might actually go up a little bit as some of the encumbered items come, get paid. They may be a little less than what we encumbered them for. So, which council had suggested maybe a taxi with the remaining $20,000 of those funds. But they are still there, so we can play with those for the rest of the year. Other things he suggested was he got a quote for like a $7,000 ID maker setup, which he thought it helps. He'd like to have IDs for everybody in the city, but some of his logic is, well, for when we're having to do vaccine clinics and stuff, we can get IDs made for the volunteers and the staff, and in addition to the normal police force and city workers. So he's got some lists like that. There's a lot of things, a lot of big projects that we could do. The lost revenue items, as Amber suggested, with trying to figure out how to take down the smokestack at the power plant. But a lot of the items are $100,000 or less. Well, a lot of them are $10,000, which is a drop in the bucket of 1.77 million. So there's going to have to be a lot of discussion and planning as we expend these funds.
right.
But yeah, unfortunately, I know I feel a little, I apologize for not having more information. They just haven't
It's
really
not
gotten
there.
it out yet. Yeah, and so
Yeah, if we jump to page 5 of the bulletin, about a third away from the bottom, the paragraph that begins similarly. The local fiscal recovery plan has very broad allowable uses, and upon initial receipt, the local government may not know exactly how the dollars will ultimately been used. Bingo. I mean, that's exactly where we're at right now. I like discretion, but I also like, some guidance.
yeah,
When I talked to the commissioners, they had a lot of their departments coming to them and they were just like, listen, get yourselves ready, but we don't want to see it until we know what the guidelines are. So we don't have to go through and so it's crazy.
Well, that's like, the resolution that's coming up. It's the best we can do right now. Okay. State auditor, you want us to create a fund and you've given it a name, boom, here it is. And, it's to be prepared for when things happen. So are there any other webinars or something that, of course, they always come at a time that I'm committed for something else, but
we do. By the way, Mayor Shag is now on the thing. For the record, there he's
okay. Thank you.
Is it the 22nd or the 27th? That is our next one. I think I put on my calendar here.
It is the 27th.
27th. And so that will be, oh gosh, what's the name? Joe, what's the name of the organization? They've done our plans for us.
Ohio Municipal League, they're in conjunction with the Montrose Group.
That's right. Yeah.
Can you send that email or that link or whatever registration information out again?
I certainly will.
Send that to all council members, please.
Okay. So I'm hoping that they will have over a month from the last presentation, which was really from the lobbyists, right after it passed. So I'm hoping that they will have some more insight. But I'll send it right after our meeting here.
Okay, great.
What was I gonna say? Oh, the one thing that and when OML did their first presentation, I believe that it was one of the lobbyists or one of the lobbyist organizations that put it on, obviously, because they would know as much as anybody. But they stated that they want the funds to be spent. They don't want to get the money back. So it's and I kind of talking with the state auditors, it's kind of the same thing. They're in the same boat we are. Like they really don't have any guidance, so they're kind of just looking for reasonableness. So I don't know how. I don't think they're gonna come in and say, gee, I don't know, this ID maker here, I don't think that qualifies. I think if council has a reasonable justification for something, based on what I've heard, I think it will be accepted. Because they're never going to be able to make fine-tuned rules. So it's just, I think that the key is just to expend the money that's going to benefit us in our recovery, the best that we can, without putting us in a situation where all of a sudden we're spending more money than we're bringing in down the road. But yeah, that's unfortunately about the best I can do right now.
Well, the page 8 of the bulletin at the bottom, under questions, this bulletin is not intended to answer all ARP questions governments may have. Isn't that the truth? At this point, the state auditor understands there are more questions than answers, such as, will the Uniform Guidance Act apply? What is a negative economic impact? Okay, we agree, don't we, Jessica? Can funding be used for any infrastructure project, even if unrelated to the pandemic? Hopefully we'll get some answers to these questions sooner than later. I'm not going to hold my breath, but it's not just Shelby that needs this information. It's everybody. So, hopefully the people out of Treasury will get this information, to the states, and it'll get passed on to us. So,
Wait to random, unrelated thought. Boy, I bet the state auditor, they're probably just distraught, because every single entity that they probably audit is going to have a single audit for the next 3 years. So that's going to be a lot of work on their part. Anyway.
All right. Well, anything else on the ARP this afternoon?
I don't have anything.
All right. Well, let's go to our usual schedule, and let's look at the monthly financial statements.
Okay. Would you like me to start at the front, sir?
Sure.
Okay. By the way, I don't know, the first number in the top right, for some reason it's showing decimal places. I looked at this like, wait a minute, how do we have a 70 or like a $700,000 change? No, it's only $72,000.7. So I'll make that adjustment before I give them to council, so it doesn't look that odd. But general fund, we have 1.229 million in the bank. After encumbrances, it's 1.42 million, or 1.042 million. I'm sorry, just a little over $1 million. We are down about 72,000 for the year. Once again, property tax revenue hasn't come in as of March. It has come in. It came in this week though. So
Okay.
Monday, I believe, is when it deposited. So April will have an uptick there. We did. Yeah. By the way, for all funds, we did have. Kudos to Amber for being on top of things and getting the administrative costs all on the books for this month. Most of the time we don't get that done until April, but so we do have the first 3 months of administrative costs, and then also the encumbrances for the last 9 months in these financials. So you'll see big expenditures in, well, not necessarily big, but you'll see an increase in expenditures a little bit for all of the funds that have an expense for administrative costs, and then it bumps up the revenue in the general fund a little bit. You'll also see higher encumbrances, which in some cases, like the sewer fund, which is now I think under $100,000, that does have 9 months of encumbrances for administrative costs in it. So, while yeah, that is something that they're on the hook for, it is an internal expense, and I suppose worst case scenario, we could make changes so that they don't have to do that. It's not like they're having to purchase.
Well, you can write the POs for those for, a quarter, for 6 months, or do the whole year.
Mhm.
Why do it 3 times when you can do it once?
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, yeah, general fund, we've got what, 26% of income and 22% of expenses, of revenue versus, or actual versus appropriated. So I'm I'm okay with that for the beginning of the year. It's a very healthy balance. I need my ruler. I had mentioned in my email how the font's kind of small. It is kind of small. I'll probably actually fix that for council as well, so it's a little bigger. The street fund, we're starting work on that sort of stuff. I think we have 58,000 encumbered there, but all those balances are still healthy. The income tax, we've brought in and expended just a little over $1 million. We'll talk more about that with the pages in the back. The health fund, it has a cash balance of 463,000. After encumbrances, it's just over 400,000. It's down for the year 66,000 because, well, we've had a lot of vaccine work and COVID related stuff, but it's still up from 2020, 156,000. So the grants we received last year are certainly helping that fund. The park board, it's holding steady. What do they have? They've got about 95,000 in the bank right now, 63 after encumbrances. So nothing out of the ordinary as they ramp up their programming. Nothing too notable really through most of the 200s there. There are Fund 283 local coronavirus relief. After encumbrances, we still have 20,000 in that fund to do with as we please. Capital improvements, we've got after encumbrances 234,000. So we'll start those projects now that appropriations are over. Actually, I think Mr. Ensman he's got the wheels turning for all kinds of things, which we'll see at council next week. The sidewalk and street funds, 352, 353, those are about the same. I guess sewer is really the first really notable thing. You will see that there's 173,000 in cash after encumbrances, which do include the administrative costs. It's 94,761. We're down almost 40,000 for the year, so we're down 40,000 in 3 months in cash. That's not great. We're getting close to being troublesome.
Chime in.
Yeah. Oh, please do.
Mr. Ensman and I have been talking about that fund. He does have, he'll discuss more in the utility committee and with council as on the agenda for the PCA on that to try to help assist that. So we've been noticing consistently it's each month, and not just this year, but before that, even in 2020, it's consistently losing money. So something's got to change with the sewer fund. So that's under our close eye right now. And we're gonna you know, I mean, we have revenues coming in later this year, like you suggested and stuff, and things are on the uptick, but in the meantime, we gotta get the expenditures under control, so.
Yeah.
It's
So,
a
you
weird-
know, I think if we haven't, if it's like this next month, we're probably going to have to take real action.
Yeah, we're working on it. It's not like we're aware of the problem, so there's been some brainstorming on what to do to fix it, so. He's gonna discuss that more in the next meeting, I'm sure.
I'm sure. The nothing really too surprising in the 401 or 402 funds. The water fund 500, it has cash balance of 303,000. After encumbrances, it's 105,000. Once again, that includes administrative costs, so it's not quite as low as it sounds. But they're actually up 16 grand for the year, and up 108,000 from March of last year. So they're moving in the right direction, and slowly as well. And it's nice that it's only up 16 grand. It means we're not overbilling. So that's good. Nothing real surprising in the 501 or 502. The electric fund, it has almost 6 million in cash. After encumbrances, it's about 4.4 million. We're actually up again 160,000 for the year. So that's interesting. And actually, I think John's going to talk about that a little bit in the next meeting too. I think part of it has to do with we purchased those generators, and they're able to use those at peak times to reduce our overall expenditures. So it seems like they're cutting expenditures pretty well. I should probably, well, how many columns do you want to see? But maybe I might see if I can't pull a report here, like a year-to-date comparison of expenditures at some point, just to see where we are each line by line. Well, I suppose I can use appropriations, so I'll play with that, see if I can't find something for the future. 601, 602, nothing too fancy. I don't really have anything else. Oh, hospitalization 715. It's hanging in there as well, with a cash balance of 636,000. So we're up 16,000 for the year in that fund.
Hey, Brian, can I
Yeah.
chime in on this fund?
Please do.
They asked us to look into that, you know, it has a special name, I can't think of it right now, but to get a half month, you know, break on our premiums. Well, when we inquired, and they told us last year we could do a half month, but when we inquired about it just in the last month or so, they came back and the underwriter said, no, it has to be a full month premium. So, you know, between all funds combined, that's about $132,000 roughly. So it's a little bit more than we're hoping to do. We want to do half. So I wanted to throw that at the committee to see their thoughts and feelings on a full month. You know?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
right
No,
now.
I'd love to hear council's opinion on that as well. Garland, Nathan, do you guys have any thoughts?
Well, it's very similar to the windfall we got with the workers' comp, you know, last year. The difference there is we had paid it and they refunded. Here's where a case where we just wouldn't pay it.
Yeah, you know, like I don't have enough historical knowledge of the fund at this point to know what our really safe, you know, balance is. And of course, we are insured for major catastrophe type stuff, you know, where somebody's all of a sudden gonna have $1 million in
Yeah,
medical
we are in school that kicks in after 50,000 for an individual expense. I mean, I've seen the fund shrink, you know, recent memory and recent history, you know, quite quickly. So
Yeah, we were down to what, 300,000 at one point, one
Ooh.
year?
no, it was scary low. It was like I think 200,000 once, or
Yeah.
like 200,000 one month there at one point, and we had to subsidize it a little bit and put some extra money in it just to get through the year, I think. And then kind of people got healthy and had less procedures next year and it rebounded a little bit. But
Well, the
If
the
you-
question then is, what is the optimum amount that should be in that fund at any one time? You know,
there-
if we take the 132 off, we'd skip it, you know, it takes us down to $500,000.
right. And we'd probably be okay there,
Mhm.
you know. Their number that they throw is like 220, 250,000 minimum, which I think I don't feel comfortable there myself, just from what how quickly I've seen it change before.
Yeah.
I think we could entertain the idea of skipping 1 month premium though. That's just me talking from how it's performing currently. But the thing with hospitalization though, and just bills in general, I mean, everyone goes and gets expensive procedures done at once or something crazy happens, and that can change very quickly.
Yeah,
So it's a gamble. That's
well, exactly. And how clear is anyone's crystal ball?
right.
Mhm.
And then then you're also not being responsible, just like keep growing and growing when you could, you know, give the funds a break too. So
Yeah, I know it's like, well, last year at this time we had 421,000 going into coronavirus and we weren't worried.
there's no
but-
right answer.
But you know, it does, that's a valid point is now that, you know, because obviously they weren't doing surgeries for some time that weren't mandatory. So we might see an increase in procedures here in the near future.
I
Right?
just looked at this week's what they paid for this week, this 1 week alone, and it's an expensive week. It was 65,000. Other weeks will be like 10,000, you know, so it can fluctuate very quickly.
Mhm. So
This might be, you know, we're only 1/4 into the
Yeah.
year. This might be a better topic perhaps in July after we've got half year under our belt.
I would agree.
Okay, well, let's make a mental note to revisit this one in July.
okay.
I think we'd all feel much more comfortable in coming up with some sort of recommendation.
Makes sense.
Okay,
All right. So bottom line on the first page, we've got 14,751,000 amongst all of our funds. We're down about 40,000 for the year, but that's not terrible, being that a lot of our income tax and a lot of our property taxes, well, none of our property taxes has been received yet. So that's really all I have for the first page.
okay. Let's kind of for the sake of time, let's go to the last page where we can look at the income tax comparisons.
Yeah, you know, it just keeps on surprising me. We're actually doing pretty well. Year to date through March, we're at $1,012,674. That's up 5.73% over last year, and up 15% over the 3-year average.
Wow.
Yeah, I just, you know, the one thing is last year we might have had some people who decided, you know what, I'm just not going to file my tax returns, because it was probably about the 20th or so of March that all the deadlines got shifted back last year. So it might have even been the 25th. So I don't think it should affect that much, but maybe a fewer returns because of that. But just, yeah, I'm really shocked that we're doing this well. It's, you know, for the month we're up 30% over last year, and have our second best year ever. Yeah, you know, you look at it compared to 2019, we're only down 25 grand, which 19 was our best year ever. So yeah, I'm really happy with collections, and breaking it down. Yeah, I suppose we could, you know, you look at the individual business withholding breakdowns, which is, I think, on page 2. Individuals down about 10%, which, you know, once again, they moved the deadline back to May 17th, which, by the way, there are a lot of people who were still in here today. So that
Bless their hearts.
yeah, that's right. Thank you very much. We will gladly accept your tax returns now. So it's not surprising. We actually kind of expected as a whole for the individual income to be down, but I'm not worried at all about being down 9% right now. Business returns up 58% over last year and 59% on the 3-year average. That's phenomenal. And the other thing is the money that folks receive from like the PPP program, that shouldn't be included in their income for the city, because that's just, it's not non-taxable for federal, and we're following suit with that. So they did pretty well even without those funds, to have the business tax revenue be up like that. So either that, or we just had everybody file in the first 3 months this year, and nobody filed in the first 3 months last year. That's the other potential variable. But I think that just a lot of businesses just did okay. And it's really nice to see withholding up by $50,000 over last year, because the withholding, there were some folks that the layoffs did start the last 10 days of March or so last year, but that wouldn't have impacted probably any of these financials, because they would be at least 2 weeks arrears as far as reporting for this, if they were paying us every 2 weeks even. So that just, to me, shows strong wages in town. So I'm really, really happy about that. Yeah, I had nothing to do with it, but I'll take it. So Jessica, you take those numbers and you figure out why.
I will say some of our employers have increased wages because they are having trouble attracting and keeping workers. So there has been some wage increase in town.
That is definitely the truth. I don't really have anything else on the back page. Should I mention anything else on page 2? There's really nothing.
The comparisons, we've read those. Let's, for the sake of time, because we need to let the mayor make his report on personnel. Let's look at the cash and investment reconciliation statement.
By the way, one quick comment that somebody council might bring up is wages for both general and overall. They're up about 20%. But I want to say that we probably had an extra payroll. I think that's a timing issue. So that's, we didn't just give everybody a 20% raise.
No.
It's just, it'll even back out next month. So that's just, accounting blip there. The cash investment.
Wait till you get to the year where you have 27 pays, right?
Oh yeah, hopefully we got a good balance coming in.
Be glad you're not a school treasurer. People really howl then.
Okay, so cash and investments, like we said on page 1, it's 14,751,000 total. Our general fund account has 4.38 million in it. The electric fund is 2.937. Nothing has really changed substantially in any of the funds. Nothing has changed with the investments. Everything's either in the same CDs or bonds that they were in the prior month. So not a whole lot of surprising information there.
Okay. Brian, one thing I want to mention, you and I had a conversation. You had talked at our last meeting about bidding insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I had a conversation about that. I think you said those policies don't expire until November, was it?
Correct.
So we've got some time to do that. And we need to decide just what all we want to bid. And there's we have any number of policies. Fire and casualty. There's also the liability coverage that we have that is particularly important to the police department. Again, all of us are covered, to some extent for that. So maybe you and I, between now and the next meeting, can actually sit down, look at those policies, see what they do, and come up with an idea of just what we want to bid and some sort of timetable to do that.
I would love to do that. I will. We'll get together and set up a time.
Yeah, Mayor, obviously, you're an important part of that discussion. We'll bring you into that as well. So if there's nothing else with finance, let's take a look at the personnel side. Mayor, and where are you today?
Well, Haworth, New Jersey.
Oh, New Jersey. Okay. All right.
So just came back for a little trip with the grandkids. So we're
Good.
back in the house now. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry about my absence early on here. But the only thing I believe for personnel, and Amber, you can back me up on this, is that we do have a firefighter. Mike Paulo will be retiring on the 23rd. So the Civil Service Commission met Monday at 1:30, and I did not make that meeting, but I believe the intent was to get things lined up for filling that position, and perhaps even looking at the police department as well. So I'll try to get caught up with Mr. Elgin upon my return. But Mr. Paulo has been a very, very good staff member on our fire department, and he has asked to stay on in the capacity of being a volunteer, which is, it just slides right in there. And
Sure.
Great idea. So a great mentor for the younger folks coming up. So I believe that's about all there is for personnel.
You missed a little bit while you're out.
Oh, I did. Okay.
Yeah, it's also fire related. On the firefighter side, I do have another firefighter who he's filled out his application to retire with pension. It's Mr. Steve Hammer.
Oh, okay.
However, as I found out, he hasn't told us a date yet. And as I found out from the pension board, he doesn't give them a date either. It just means once he fills out the application, he has 6 months to actually retire once he completes it. So he did it in March sometime. So if he doesn't retire, if he changes his mind, his application just expires and he has to redo it. So we're trying to find out when he might want to, but he hasn't told us. It might be in July, we think, but we're not 100% sure. So we may very well have another opening very soon in the full-time. In the part-time, just yesterday, Lauren Krantz, I believe his last name is. He's been with the department about 25 years as a volunteer. He resigned actually because he moved on the other side of Shiloh and he just wants to volunteer for their fire department. On the flip side though, we did have a young man by the name of Brinson DeLauder who is going to be joining the volunteer force. He's actually still in high school. He'll be graduating here very soon. Seems very, very efficient. He was very prompt to get his paperwork and all that done that we asked him to do. And we have high hopes for him. So he'll be joining though. So it's changing a little bit.
Well, thank you for catching me up there. Appreciate it.
When you get back.
Thank you.
All right then. Is there anything else? Nathan, is there anything you want to bring up at this point?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, if there's no one else, nothing else, we will adjourn at 3:24 p.m. Thank you very much, everyone.
All right.
Everybody,
Good afternoon.
take care.